Jai Guru, everyone.
Jai Guru, everybody.
Guru.
Welcome to minute number 79 of our podcast, Awake, the Life of Yogananda, minute by minute. And as always, I am joined here by Chris and Priyank. How are you guys doing? You can see the seasons have changed. It's becoming cold. Gas is expensive these days, right? Yeah, I know.
I'm receding hairline these days. Yeah, I'm good. Happy to be here. Very snug and warm in my little Rome flat at the moment. So hello to everybody in Italy, in Rome, wherever you are in the world.
Amazing.
Yeah, we're nearing the end of our project. Next episode is the penultimate episode.
Yeah.
This one's
two more to go.
Yeah, and
yes.
we've been heavily debating how to carry on this for a next series. So watch this space.
Watch this space. Yeah.
Revealed announcement.
Vehement disagreements and agreements.
Yes. Let's leave it at that. Let's go to our minute. The minute is like our podcast, the last minutes, they feel like it's like winding down slowly. You see beautiful images, you see the ocean, you see the narrator talking about the, how should we call it, the ocean of consciousness, I guess, and that we should look at it, stand at the shore, not get absorbed in it. And then we have Krishna Das making an appearance once again, and he's talking about what a guru is, and he uses an interesting word, the Guru-ness of a guru. We're gonna go into that, and yeah, let's start out with the first part, which is the ocean of consciousness that we should not get absorbed in. And when Chris heard that, he kind of got inspired by the churches that he saw in Italy, I think especially St. Paul's Cathedral. Chris, do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so any listeners that have been following us for the last few months may know that I've been in Italy for 2.5 months now. So I've been taking advantage of the rich history that Italy has with all the basilicas and churches. They're everywhere. They're everywhere. So it's really amazing architecture, amazing history, amazing faith and devotion that they have here. But one thing that I love looking at in particular, I'm slightly obsessed with it, just to say that. It's all the symbols and the story that is written into the decor in all of the basilicas, in the stories, in the paintings. It's just beautiful and breathtaking, and no less is Rome and the Vatican the home for somebody with an obsession like this. So anybody who's been in some of the basilicas in Rome, you may have been in the St. Paul's Basilica in particular. I was there just last week with my wife, and I took a little picture of the ceiling. And I noticed on the ceiling, they had these beautiful golden decorative, there was flowers and emblems everywhere. And I noticed the symbol of the waves and the symbol of reincarnation was everywhere. So I don't know what the other symbol was. It's the one that goes in almost like a square.
What's the symbol of reincarnation? Is that like a Indian symbol?
Well, there's two that I typically see. One is the waves, I think, is the symbol for incarnation, which we're about to talk about. That is everywhere in the churches. It's everywhere in St. Peter's Basilica and St. Paul's Basilica, which is beautiful. Not many people go to St. Paul's Basilica, but if you can go there, it's amazing. But the other one is like this, almost like a swastika type sign. And I think shows life kind of going on and on and on and on forever. In this kind of wheelhouse of life. But there's multiple symbols of incarnation, and if you know some, message in the comments. But I just wanted to note that with my sort of keen eye for these little details going around St. Paul's Basilica was pretty interesting, and made me wonder, did the early Christian faith, did they talk about incarnation? Did they preach it? Were they aware of it? Because I heard a little story that maybe they were initially, and then they got rid of it from the teachings some time ago. But very, very interesting and very beautiful details on the ceiling there.
Interesting. Brian?
Chris, did you go to the Via Borghese yet?
I don't know.
Borghese Gallery is like this.
Oh, the Borghese. No.
You didn't.
It's a park, right?
And there's a gallery which has got some phenomenal sculptures and Bernini's, and you must go there. But Bernini, is it Bernini?
Okay.
Is it Bernini, the artist? The sculptor?
Okay.
Not Panini. Panini is the not just a sandwich, but that Indian grammarian, Sanskrit scholar. Yeah. Anyway,
nice.
In terms of the sky, the churches, Italian churches have got the most phenomenal ceilings, haven't they? In terms of the artwork, Chris mentioned like golden, plaster work, and that's obviously very nice. But I really love just the frescoes on the ceiling. Usually like angels floating around, and the beautiful thing they do is they kind of get proportions really right. So if you look up, like it looks like it's the person's right there and it's the right proportion, but if you go up like to the top floor, you'll see that they're like really elongated, so it looks correct from your ground level, which is pretty cool how they do that.
Yeah, they have in the Vatican a famous table that you could be standing on one side of the painting. I think it's a very large painting, and you could look at the painting, and the table looks like it's angled to the left, but when you walk to the right, it's actually angled towards you on the right, and it's amazing how they do it. But I did notice in St. Paul's Basilica, they have this huge mosaic, and it's from the 5th century, so it's 1,500 plus years old, and it was the only thing that survived the fire that consumed St. Paul's Basilica all those years ago. And above Jesus's head, you have this very interesting, like oval kind of shape, I think representing the sun, but they have the waves and then these, more squared shapes to represent incarnation. That I believe is incarnation. So these details have been there for hundreds and hundreds of years in the Christian faith. So
did you read the Dan Brown book, Angels and Demons? Yeah, because he talks heavily about all the symbology that's there, and the hidden meanings. And
I wouldn't have a clue. No.
Oh, you did? You not read it? You should read it. It's really cool.
I watched the movies, but you do feel like you're in a movie scene when you walk into St. Peter's Basilica in the Vatican.
True.
For sure. It's gargantuan.
All the hidden meanings. I think I heard somewhere Rome has 900 churches, so you could go to a different church every day for 3 years.
Not surprised.
Yeah.
Everywhere.
Very nice. So let's move on to the part where he says the ocean of consciousness, and I looked at some of the writings of Guruji, and I found one that I found quite talking about this a little bit, and I'm just going to read it out. It's from the Divine Romance, and it's titled "Our Little Minds Are Part of God's Omnipotent Mind." And it is, the mind of God created the stars and all the worlds. Mind is the supreme factor that is working throughout creation, that is keeping the cells of our bodies together. And this wonderful consciousness in every particle of matter is all the work of that divine mind. The mind that needs no instrument to accomplish its object. Our little minds are part of the omnipotent mind of God. Beneath the wave of our consciousness is the infinite ocean of his consciousness. It is because the wave forgets it is part of the ocean that it becomes isolated from that oceanic power. As a result, our minds have become weakened by our trials and material limitations. The mind has stopped its work. You will be surprised how much it can do if you cast off the limitations you have put on it. And this kind of describes a little bit what he says, like look at the ocean of consciousness, stand on the shore. Yeah, Priyank?
Yeah, Guruji really uses this metaphor well of or the simile well of the oceans and the waves, and we're once we become realized, we'll become part of the ocean again, or realize that we're part of the ocean again. In particular, and then he also uses it in a couple of his chants, like I am the bubble, make me the sea. And then, so that's a quite nuanced approach. I mean, not even the wave, just a bubble floating on the on the wave, which is quite a cool thought. And also the do not dry the ocean of my love, which is also a very powerful chant.
Yeah, he really likes this this metaphor, because I guess when you're in the perspective of a saint, or maybe if you're in the astral plane, everything that we're in here seems like a big ocean, and we are just little waves. There was this one talk at Convocation this year. I think it was Sister Bhakti or I don't remember actually who said it, but she said, like, Guruji sometimes went on and said, Divine Mother is playing such a joke on all of you. If you would know what kind, how unreal this world is you're in right now, and once you wake up from your dream, you will laugh about all of this. And I feel like that kind of goes in the same direction. Yeah, Chris.
These metaphors, for me, are so important to actually help grasp the concept of God, because how do you put God into words? We're maybe evolving in the Western world from thinking God is a male, old male figure with a long beard, to trying to really comprehend, okay, what does it actually mean, the word God? And these metaphors really help bring it home for me. I think we all can intuitively grasp these concepts that Yogananda puts so simply for us. So the deep intelligence that it takes to actually find these analogies, that really everybody, I think, when they hear it, kind of has that moment, the O and moment, like, oh yeah, okay, I can feel this to be true. It's like the fish that's swimming in the ocean looking for the water, that doesn't realize it's permeating everything. So like these little analogies really help bring it home and give your mind something to anchor into, to grasp the concept of God. So when you're thinking of God and meditating and praying, I think these things really help. They help me, at the very least, get my little mind around some of these grand concepts.
Yeah, for sure. I think it kind of helps put everything in perspective, right? Yeah. Priyank?
Maybe the listeners would have something that they love as an analogy. What's their favorite analogy or metaphor for understanding God? Please share.
In Hindu lore or mythology, there's that story where creation was created through churning the ocean, or churning the milk, and out of that came, obviously when you churn milk, butter comes. But when you're churning, when the gods like Vishnu and Brahma like got together, and Brahma then churned this ocean, and then creation came about, basically. And which is kind of similar to the, the scientific evolution, the Western scientific evolution of life. At the start, the earth was just, water, wasn't it? And out of that came microbes and bacteria, and then single-celled organisms, and then all of that came out, and then the story, if you believe it. But it kind of without any of that, Indian thought on that was consistent with that thousands of years ago.
And the story about Shiva and his wife, I don't know the story, so shock, but the Irish guy doesn't know this story. But is it that his wife was dancing around him to wake him up, and then once he woke up, then maybe the universe was created or something like that? Is there a story similar to that about someone sleeping, then the wife in the story dances around him, and then there's creation may come of it? I've heard
maybe
something
I
similar,
haven't heard that version, but you may
but
have dreamed.
interesting.
Maybe was it in a dream?
Was it the dream of life? Yeah.
Dream.
But interesting to me. I have heard that like these stories really have deep meaning in reality. They're not just simply fanciful stories told to children. That they're analogies, and in the Gita, I suppose, really goes into some of the depths of the scripture. Yogananda really interprets it beautifully.
Yeah, I completely agree. I feel it mostly helped with, when life is difficult, then those stories and those analogies, they help you see everything in the right perspective, that actually all your worries are not really that important. Actually, what's important is you are the bubble in the sea, and you will go back in the sea eventually. And everything else is just a big play, a big charade.
But when the bubble does dissolve into the sea, it stops retaining its individuality.
They are talking about this multiple times, right? Like, I think, doesn't even Arjuna say that he's kind of he doesn't want to lose his individuality, and that is that really true that you lose your individuality? Or
I think in the Gita, he describes that we have a choice to merge into the ocean in cosmic consciousness, or cosmic, or we can retain our individuality and continue to serve if and when we get to that level.
Right. So okay, so there's a pop-up and you can click one or the other, kind of like that, and then you can come back as an avatar, or you can just never come back.
Or do various like background work.
Yeah.
Of which,
I mean, I feel
there's Hindu gods. There's like thousands of Hindu gods that are essentially that fit that role.
Yeah, I wonder what is the wiser choice. I feel like as long as we're still in the body, we're so self-identified, it would be hard for us to give up individuality. But maybe there comes a point where this choice might be a difficult one. Yeah. All right. So let's move on to, unless Chris, you have something to
add. No, I was trying to Google very quickly about the story that I was trying to say, because I'm certain I heard it somewhere. It may be, please somebody correct me, the story of Brahma, and maybe Brahma's wife. I still don't know. I've only scratched the surface of my Googling.
I'm surprised Google didn't say you're crazy, you're making this up. Stop searching crazy things.
They just don't know who's searching it. Yeah, otherwise they would. But I think there's something to do with the creation story in Hinduism, but I'll stop there before I butcher it any more than what I'm doing.
Okay, maybe for another episode.
Another episode.
Yeah. let's go to Krishna, because he talks about what a guru is, and that it's not important that he is like, his appearance is not really important. What is important is that he is like a real guru. That is, how should we say? He says he's not identified with his body, and I think we would also add like a self-realized master who can like lead you, I don't know, through the trials of life into kind of a state of samadhi. That's kind of what we want, right? And yeah, the kind of word that he uses is the guru-ness of that person, which means the guru-ness is not his outer appearance. The guru-ness is like an inner value that the guru has, and the ability to guide you to the other side, basically. Yeah, Priyank?
Yeah, so I was a bit torn by what he was saying, because if you don't think about it too deeply, which is the opposite of what we do on this podcast, it sounds very fairy tale and beautiful. Like guru-ness resides in that body, but that's not what it's not an old, it's not an old man in a blanket, or he says a guy in robes. But in our case, Guruji was a man in a blanket sometimes, like the Lake Shrine picture. He's got like a blanket on, I believe, and he definitely is wearing robes most of the time. So in our case, it is this guy. The Guru is this person that is embodied in the body of Paramahansa Yogananda. But Krishna Das is kind of saying, no, that's just Guru-ness that's residing in that body. So he's kind of like looking at a guru as a kind of like a very high level like energy almost in what he's saying here. And my wife does this as well sometimes. She says like my wife doesn't follow Yogananda, but she worships, she would pray to Yogananda just as if she does to her own guru, and then she would say, well, what's the difference? And and I always tell her that I personally develop a very personal relationship with the guru. So, and I think personally that for me that works the best, because then you can have a conversation with him as if he's next to you, and he'll then respond through either through your intuitive realizations, or through signs, or if you're very fortunate, through light, or something much more profound. But that personal aspect, I think, is very important. Whereas if you just consider what Krishna Das is kind of saying, this universal guru element, and this probably partly because his guru is gone, obviously, as our guru is gone in terms of his physical form. He shed his physical form, so maybe he's trying to still come to terms with that, perhaps. I don't know, maybe I'm being a bit too judgmental. Yeah, Mike.
There's multiple things that came to mind. One is, of course, the story of Guruji venturing out in the Himalayas while he's already in Sri Yukteswar's ashram, because he's looking for his mountain guru, right? He's like, this is not for me, I want to be in the Himalayas. And then he goes to a shrine, and I don't remember who that shrine was dedicated to, but he did not bow, because he felt like this is not his guru, or this is not something he's familiar with. And then he ran in circles the next few days, not finding his guru. And then once he found him, he told him, yeah, you ran in circles because you did not bow before the divine. So I guess that's one aspect of it, right? That there is the divine. But yeah, I completely agree with you, Priyank, because our guru and Sri Yukteswar, they lived for us this really close guru-disciple relationship, right? It's a very personal thing. And I mean, we don't have just one guru, we have a line of gurus, but also we have a guru, like Paramahansa Yogananda. And it is a bit, I'm not 100% clear, like, I I know that some people pray to other gurus more than others do, and on our altar, I mean, and that's fine. And I never heard anyone say, no, don't do that, don't pray too much to this one, or it's the balance, and it's also individual, right? Everyone has their individual ties with each of the gurus. There's so many stories that come to mind. There was like this one nun at convocation who said, sometimes you meditate on guru and then another guru pops up into your mind, and that could be a divine intervention. And I was like, wow, what is that? That sounds so interesting. Yeah. Let's leave it at that. Priyank?
Yeah, just your story about how Guruji went to the Himalayas even after, finding Sri Yukteswar. Sri Yukteswar kind of did something similar as well. I'm just reading some biographies about him. And he after meeting Lahiri Mahashaya, he also went and did met various different masters and learned like different techniques and different what's it called, roots of knowledge. And then he went and then he acknowledged it, and he kind of, this was probably before he was realized, as in this life. This is before he probably had his samadhi experiences. So when he was still searching, but after he met his guru, he was still wondering a little bit and imbibing everything, which was interesting. Chris?
Yeah, I think of my mum popped into my mind when you guys were talking, because she would pray to Jesus very readily. So she would have pictures of Jesus everywhere, which is great. I grew up with that, in the car, in all of the rooms in the kitchen. But she would readily pray, being a Roman Catholic, to many saints, right? So we have the our prayers would include saints of all religions. So to me, a guru, being a spiritual teacher, one who is ordained by God or God illuminated, is going to be, a saintly individual, really. So there's going to be a kind of a fine line for many people in this sense. Like a true guru is your own personal relationship with that you commit. You commit as a devotee to that person, as Jesus may be that individual, say, for my mum, because she would talk about Jesus head and shoulders over any other saints in the Catholic faith. But maybe for us, as we talk about saints of all religions, we can pray to many different saints in that way, just as she does in her faith, as they may be a guru for other individuals in their own right. Interestingly, he said, Krishna said that it's going to be somebody, because a guru is somebody who you have a karmic tie with. And that's something we've talked about before, speculating, what karmic tie do we have with our guru, with Paramahansa view? How have we maybe come across in a previous life? And that's
probably.
Yeah. Do you guys think that's the case in terms of having to have a karmic tie with your guru? Do you think that's the case? And whenever I heard this, where my mind went was to Jesus. Jesus's day, as you can say about all great saints, very few actually followed him and other saints of the time. And I often wondered why that was. Surely you see the truth, it's there in front of your eyes. How blind do you need to be to not follow it? Well, probably pretty blind, but maybe this is something to do with it, like the karmic ties is maybe what actually draws the individuals to the word of Jesus at that time. Maybe it's that history that they've had with him, and that individual, that Guru-ness found its way through Jesus, at that time, to bring those who he's had that karmic tie with. And that's maybe why others fall to the wayside somewhat. speculation on my part, but it often kind of irked me. Like, we've had Yogananda here for, his teachings, like people hear it and study it and then go away on different paths. And I often wondered why. This is amazing for me. It's like it's the best thing out there. But maybe it's because of this karmic tie. I don't know. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I agree with the karmic tie thing, because like each of us has people that aren't born, the devotees that aren't born into the path, such as Mike, who is, we usually have that story like where, you have that moment where you think, oh no, this is definitely it. And as you say, Chris, some people walk away from SRF and you question whether they had that moment because perhaps they didn't have that karmic tie. Of course, they could, there could be other reasons. They're afraid to have that transformation and hence walking away subconsciously. But perhaps they didn't have that karmic tie, and hence they aren't. They don't have that eureka kind of moment. My life. This is where my life belongs. Such as what we have had. But Guru, going back to that, Guru, we know that means Guru, dispeller of darkness. So I, therefore, bringer of light. So that's the literal translation. But the esoteric meaning of the word Guru is what we have been just talking about here. I.e., is not just a saint, is not just a learned man, which is what tends to be used. Nowadays you have like a technology guru or whatever, but the esoteric guru is the one basically who takes ownership of your life and takes ownership of your path to God. And I know Mike is probably going to read out a section about obedience to the guru in a minute, but yeah, so it's much more than just someone that may be spiritually elevated. For us, it's the homecoming, as it were, for our spiritual path. But going back to which of the 5, 6 gurus do we resonate with most? We have Preamble, which is our guru, which is our Paramahansa Yogananda, who's the incarnation of divine love. And we have Jnana Avatar, which is Sri Yukteswar in his holy science and wisdom and intelligence. And if that's the method, if that's the approach that most resonates with you, then Sri Yukteswar is your guru. And Yogavatar, which is Yogavatar Lahiri Mahashai, who is a master of all yoga. And we know that because of the beautiful stories from the autobiography of him by Guruji that he heard. And also then we have Mahavatar, which is the greatest incarnation, which is Babaji. So yeah, we can we can choose which, and it may change through the day or through our lives, which one we most resonate with. Mike?
Yeah, and someone at Convocation even said that it is probable that we spent past lives with each of the gurus on the altar, which I find so fascinating. I'm gonna read, like Priyank read my mind, I'm gonna read a short section about obedience to a true guru, which is the surest way of wisdom, and it's from the Divine Romance as well. It goes, ignorance is the arch enemy of man. Therefore, to guide yourself and others by wisdom is the greatest wisdom. To all those who are around me, I speak without weighing my words. If I see error in their ways, I tell them so, but I never try in any way to muffle anyone's reason. Obedience to the guru is the surest way when one is seeking God. Master, my master, Swami Sri Yukteswar, Guruji's master, first told me what to do, and afterwards he gave the reasons. I found him unerring in his wisdom. By listening to him, I saved myself many incarnations of roaming and trying to find out truth by myself. Guru is he who has experienced truth. He serves as a guide in the dark forest of life. If you follow him, he will lead you out of the darkness. If you try to find the way alone, you may needlessly lose yourself in the forest for many incarnations. So follow the Guru, and he will take you through safely. And I feel like that goes kind of hand in hand with what Priyank said earlier. And it is really the whole meaning. Like I find it hard to believe to have like a guru and not have this strong personal relationship that where he actually is the one. I feel like gurus, they interact in our life all the time, every single day. They look what's Mike up to today, and then they make small changes to make it work, to have us work out our karma and at the same time keep going. Yeah, Chris?
This is something that I think is often misunderstood by people who aren't on a path that maybe we're on or others are on. There's somebody very close to my life that has said on a few different occasions, almost challenged the obedience that I might have and the faith and devotion I would have to Guruji's teachings. And it's almost like, well, they don't understand exactly why you would need it, you know? And it's something, I think it's very difficult to actually convey the loyalty and love and the faith that you might have. But obedience is a very good word to use in this sense. And to many, it might actually sound quite militant. It might actually sound, they interpret it in a bit of an aggressive way or something like that. But to me, I resonate whenever you're reading this, Mike, the importance of this. I think Yogananda talks about it as, you know, it is the most important thing that you can have is this relationship with Guru, your Guru. And for me, it is absolute 100% case, because he will be there throughout many incarnations for us, our Guru. And that is a beautiful thing in and of itself. And that loyalty should be paid tenfold back in return.
How are you paying it back, Chris, right now?
Being on this podcast. Simple. This podcast.
A loaded question. Yes.
Right now, that's the question. This
Okay, right now. Okay, so what about today?
Phrase the question differently. Yeah, every single day, thinking of Guru on my mind, God on my mind all day. That's the challenge, isn't it?
Very good.
Nice. Should we read a bit about our SRF lineage? There's a section that we actually saw on the YSS website. And I'm going to start reading, and we will all read through. It's a few paragraphs. And it starts, the Gurus of YSS of India, or Self-Realization Fellowship, are Jesus Christ, Bhagavan Krishna, and a line of exalted masters of contemporary times, Mahavatar Babaji, Lahiri Maharshi Yukteswar, and Sri Sri Paramahansa Yogananda. To show the harmony and essential unity of the yoga precepts of Bhagavan Krishna and teachings of Jesus Christ is an integral part of the YSS SRF dispensation. All of these gurus, by their universal teachings and divine instrumentality, contribute to the fulfillment of the Yogoda Satsanga Society of India Self-Realization Fellowship mission of bringing to humanity a practical spiritual science of God realization.
Shall I continue?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Before his passing, Paramahansaji stated that it was God's wish that he be the last of the YSS Self-Realization Fellowship line of gurus. No succeeding disciple or leader in his society will ever assume the title of guru. When I'm gone, he said, the teachings will be the guru. Through the teachings, you will be in tune with me and the great gurus who sent me. When questioned about the succession of the presidency of YSS and the SRF, Paramahansaji stated, there will always be at the head of this organization men and women of realization. They are already known to God and the gurus. They shall serve as my spiritual successor and representative in all spiritual and organizational matters. Yeah, it's beautiful when Guruji came from India with all the wealth and knowledge that he came over with, and he put Jesus Christ, right next to Bhagavan Krishna, and the depths of which he actually analyzed the words, the Bible, the words that Jesus spoke in the Bible itself. He put such an importance on that, and he probably did more work on that than most scholars in the past century, really. Is pretty awesome. And the recognizing of that universality of the teachings is something that really drew me to this teaching of the SRF in particular, because there has to be, to my mind, some universality to this teaching. But I grew up with all the division in Northern Ireland, so this really speaks to my heart when he says these words about the universality of the teachings, for sure.
Yeah, I remember when we had Professor Clooney on, he mentioned that the amount of work that Guruji put into the Bible commentary, and that he didn't just pick out sections of the Bible that might suit him, but he took the whole Bible and commented on everything and explained it all. And he found he admired that.
Mm-hmm. Do you guys would you want for there to be more lines of gurus in the SRF? Or
well, a lot of people need that, so they don't actually carry on with SRF. In India, Sri Yukteswar had his disciples and the lineage, in other paths, it goes on from Lahiri Mahashaya, Sri Yukteswar, and then it goes on, and there's many organizations that in terms of the tree, there'd be parallel organizations to ours in terms of the lineage. So a lot of people do want a physical presence of a master, but then in my opinion, humble opinion, they're missing the whole thing. If they think that Guruji is not here because he's physical presence, it's not in front of us. Because just you could walk past a man that's self-realized and you wouldn't know it. So what's the difference between that and thinking that you need to be next to that person that is self-realized? The person that you go to may not even be self-realized. So it's a very dangerous thing to fall into. It's obviously much more prudent to go within to seek the relationship with the Guru, and not the physical presence, but the esoteric, the spiritual, and the energy that is the Guru. But going back to what you read, Chris, I love that he put the men and women that are going to serve as the presidents, because he knew that Dayamata was going to, and obviously that's quite significant because there's such a big organization. There was no precedent for a woman to in those days to take charge. Yeah, Mike.
I feel also that it's a bit of a generational thing. I feel like the first generation after Guruji, for them it was easier because for the most part they were contemporaries of Paramahansa Yogananda, so it didn't seem so ancient. So my father, for example, was born before Yogananda had passed away, and my mom was born in the same year. And for us, it's now starting to become ancient history, everything, right? And then it is a jump, right? And if you, yeah, it is difficult. On the other hand, from the traditional religions, you are used to that, aren't you? Like, I mean, Jesus has been gone for a very long time, and so has Shiva and Krishna, right? So it is it is quite common in religion to do it like that. But of course, having someone in person, I mean, the blessing is probably immense if you have like a real guru and you're his contemporary, and you get to be trained by him in person. Amazing blessing.
Yeah, you took the words out of my mouth there, Mike. I was going to say, in the Christian faith, Jesus hasn't been here for 2,000 years, right? So they seem to have done okay as a faith in that time, but some do talk about the second coming of Christ, and we interpret that differently to how Christians interpret it. And many would welcome that second coming of Christ. The slight problem with some of that is that they talk about it in apocalyptic terms. It's going to, come when there's an apocalypse of sorts. So that's kind of a problem. But some really do want Jesus to return. But maybe that is missing the point, as Frank said, to what Jesus was teaching about when he was here. But it is I think more of an emotional response when of course you want to see your guru in person. Of course you would want to kind of wrap your arms around him as Guruji did himself, with his it's only natural, maybe only human for us to desire that. But, yeah.
I think those days will come again where we will maybe see like the great saints reincarnate and walk down the streets here. It's just right, it's not the right time right now. I think in the autobiography, Guruji writes about Trilanga Swami, and he says when he was friends with Lahiri Mahashaya, and when Trilanga Swami walked down the street, people were in such awe. It would be similar to Jesus walking down the street in New York City. And I think those kind of things, they will happen again. It's just right now we're not in that age, I guess. All right. Should we read that last bit as well? Priyan, do you want to read that?
Sure. Just a reference to what we just talked about previously.
Oh yeah, sure.
Krishna had a birth and a demise in terms of how he went. But with Shiva, we don't know what his antecedents were. We don't know what his birth was, and we don't know when his end was. There's literally very, very little we know about Shiva. It's like, that's why I think he's the most intriguing of the trilogy of Hindu gods, because of the mystery. And he's pretty cool, isn't he, in terms of everyone getting like tattoos of him and posters of him and things like that. And obviously we know that Mahavtar Babaji has a link with him in the autobiography. Guruji says that some of Babaji's other names are names that are affiliated with Shiva. So potentially we have a lineage that goes to Shiva. Yeah, because Shiva was around even before Krishna. So Krishna, at the time that Krishna was around, Shiva lingas were around, and he would worship and pray to his community would pray to those as well. Yeah, Chris, you're smiling.
I don't know if I should say it or not. There's a certain person out there who talks about Shiva being on Earth around 75 to 80,000 years ago, around that time, which is really interesting. How would they know? But they're a guru in their own right. But that timeline is quite interesting. About 70, 80,000 years ago. Speculation on my part, just hearsay.
Why is it interesting? That 75,000 years.
Well, it's a significant amount of time. So the development of mankind, the story that we're we have for mankind, is that it was very, very early, and it's a very, very long time ago. So for any real stories that have lasted through the ages, as you know, they obviously have, if it is that long, it's exceptional.
That would have been over 3 yuga cycles ago.
Yeah, quite a legacy.
Yeah, I wonder if you did the yuga cycle analysis on that. Where would you come from?
Yes, I'll continue.
Another day.
Yeah, let me continue. So the definitions of a guru is from the YSS website. Guru is a spiritual teacher. Though the word guru is often misused to refer simply to any teacher or instructor, a true God-illumined guru is one who in his attainment of self-mastery has realized his identity with the omnipresent spirit. Such a one is uniquely qualified to lead the seeker on his or her inward journey toward divine realization. When the devotee is ready to seek God in earnest, the Lord sends him a guru. Through the wisdom, intelligence, self-realization, and teachings of such a master, God guides the disciple. By following the master's teachings and discipline, the disciple is able to fulfill his soul's desire for the manna of God perception. A true guru ordained by God to help sincere seekers is in response to their deep soul craving, is not an ordinary teacher. He is a human vehicle whose body, speech, mind, and spirituality God uses as a channel to attract and guide lost souls back to their home of immortality. A guru is a living embodiment of scriptural truth. He is an agent of salvation appointed by God in response to a devotee's demand for release from the bondage of matter. To keep company with a guru, wrote Swami Sri Yukteswar in the Holy Science, is not to be in his physical presence, as this is sometimes impossible, but mainly means to keep him in our hearts and to be one with him in principle and to attune ourselves with him. So that's a very beautiful definition. But Sri Yukteswar actually lived that sentiment, because he didn't actually live near Swami Sri Lady Mahashai. He lived away, and he would communicate with Lady Mahashai through letters. And obviously, so he would have had the chance to obviously go and move to Benares, where Lady Mahashai was, but for whatever reason, he did not feel the need. And he explained it here: it's not to be in his physical presence; it's to, imbibe what his instruction is, and to persevere and endeavor.
I guess it depends on your kind of life and if you can have that kind of spiritual environment where you are or not. Like Guruji seemed very intent on being as close to Sri Yukteswar as possible, right? Because he felt like he was really missing this kind of spiritual environment. He really found that that's what he needed. But it's like you said, Priyank, in other occasions, you have people who go and live far away from their guru. I mean, it's the same for us, right? I mean, we have, for example, a lot of people, they live far away from an X center, or they live far away from a place of worship, but that's just how their life is, and they feel like they can create their spiritual environment at home, and I guess it's also right.
The difference between us and Guruji, other than the obvious divine realization element, is that even we say we want to have physical proximity with a guru because it feels like the right thing to say, and it feels like that would help you the most. It's like this is kind of almost is like a selfish thing, but Guruji, if he, as Mike said, he had that desire, and he ended up living with Sri Yukteswar for like a decade, or next to him at least, at the very least. But he had the desire, the burning desire for God realization since he was a child, right? Since he was born, and obviously before that, we know. So for him to say it, I think is completely different, because he actually means it. He actually means that he's gonna drop everything at the flick of a coin. He's gonna drop everything and leave it all behind. But how many of us would do such a thing? We've got our lives, we've got our families, we've got our jobs, we've got our cars.
Especially the cars, yeah.
Especially if you have a Lamborghini.
Yeah.
A question did pop into my mind, and I don't know, I'll give it to you guys to answer here, is how can you muster the deep soul craving in others? Because if that is basically what a true guru ordained by God to help sincere seekers in response to their deep soul craving. So the guru, appears when the student is ready. How is it we can do that to garner deep soul craving in others? Is
it something you can do? Is it not like just a natural yearning? Like, we say we yearn for God, but we have all these other things that we also like doing. Yogananda was completely different. If you read if you read Mejda, for example, it's a completely different. His yearning, his level of yearning wasn't like manufactured. It was there from the onset, and it was like profound. It was very, very deep. Whereas personally, me, my yearning is obviously nowhere near that level. And I obviously I say that I put God at the center of my life, but how seriously do I take that? Because that's a serious, very serious thing to say, and it means quite a lot if you actually mean it. So I personally I would easily say it, but I can't honestly say that I live by the ideal. So and I don't think I think you just personally, I just think you got to keep working on your sadhana and working to increase that yearning, because it's not an easy thing just to say you can have.
Yeah.
I don't know if that, Mike?
Yeah, that's kind of what I was going to say, that it's more about you trying to increase your yearning yourself, right? And I'm guessing the yearning is always there, and it causes a lot of things in your mind, in your life. But having the wisdom to figure out that this yearning actually can only be fulfilled by perception of God, and then working towards that, it's like where I guess our journey is, from living in this world to being ready to move on, right?
Yeah.
All right. I think we've done this topic justice, the Guru-ness. Let's move on. It's kind of this minute kind of end by showing us a few images, right? One of them, I don't know what it is. Is it water that is it like a wave breaking, or is it just some clouds that are moving quickly? And then it's kind
the
of
ocean.
Yeah, or the ocean,
like waves crashing and then settling.
Waves crashing.
Yeah.
And then it ends where somebody runs up to towards I don't know, towards an abyss, and sees like this beautiful mountain vista in the background, and then there is one of those bells, and those bells, you see them often in Indian kind of mandirs. That's kind of I don't exactly know what the meaning is, but you ring them before you go in as a kind of sign of worship, I guess. And you see one of those bells there, and with the mountain vista in the background. Priyank?
I think it's two things. One is psychological. It takes the bell is that the sound takes you away from that moment of whatever you were doing in the past. Now forget that. This is the most important thing. And secondly, we know that the bell and the sound of that resonance is linked very much to our chakras and very much part of our techniques in the Om technique of meditation, for example. So there's obviously some metaphysical thing there, which we're not really privy to.
Yeah, in meditation, we have the different sounds of the chakras that we listen to in the right ear, and the chakras all have their own manifestations of sounds. Was it Guruji that said in these manifestations of the sounds in meditation, the attempt to then manifest that in physical reality was what brought about the creation of the bell in India, I believe?
This is one of the footnotes in the autobiography, I think.
Yeah. I'm looking for it right now, but I can't find it. I think it's an old version, but which is beautiful, isn't it? And maybe that is simply why we do have that resonant.
Such a cool
response.
bell. I've got one of those in my own temple room. But interestingly, I use it at the end of my meditation. I don't know why.
You ring it like this? Yeah.
Just in the right.
Yeah.
Yeah, anchoring that energy, maybe. There's method to your madness, maybe.
Maybe, I didn't think about it, but I just, now that we're talking about it, I don't know why I'm doing it at the end rather than at the beginning.
Or while you're doing the Om technique.
Yeah, that is, obviously I don't think it's this and sound bowls. I don't necessarily think it's a good thing for us to be listening to, because it can interfere with your practices in some ways. But that's another topic of discussion.
Yes, absolutely. With that said, I would say we also have done this minute justice, minute 79. So we got two minutes to go. Watch the space. Especially our last minute will be interesting because we will we're preparing something special for you. Let's say it like that. And I want to thank you, Priyank and Chris, and everyone who's listening. Jai Guru.
Jai Guru.